All right, we talked about the cerebrum and the brainstem. Now let's talk about this funky little thing on the back called the cerebellum. The cerebellum has a folded surface called the cerebellar cortex. The inside, as you might imagine, is a cerebellar medulla. The folds are called folia, which is a term that means the pages of a book. If you've ever seen a book where the pages weren't trimmed after they were printed and folded, they kind of fold in and out. If you look at the book from the side, that's what the folia are. Somebody thought it looked like the pages in a book. The white matter in the medulla of the cerebellum is branched like a tree, and so it's called the arbor vitae, which means the tree of life. So the cortex is folded into folia, and the medulla is branched into the arbor vitae. The function of the cerebellum is to fine-tune and coordinate your skeletal muscle movements, and it enables precise, smooth movements. If you have damage to the cerebellum, you're going to have trouble making smooth movements. You're going to have trouble doing things like writing, or even just smoothly putting lotion on your face. You're going to have jerky movements instead. The cerebellum also maintains your posture and your equilibrium. So without it, you lose that sense that I was talking about of proprioception, and you lose the ability to maintain your posture and maintain equilibrium, which means that you fall over a lot. And if you ever want to see what it feels like to lose your sense of proprioception and to have damage to the cerebellum, get yourself blind drunk. You don't even have to be blind drunk. Get, super tipsy. And that feeling that you're standing upright and then you're not, or that you're walking straight but then you're crooked, that is what happens to people who have lost their sense of proprioception or have damage to the cerebellum. When we look at the cerebellum from the back, this is the posterior view looking this way, we can see clearly that there are two hemispheres and there are two lobes, although they're not as distinct as they are in the cerebrum. So we do have a right and left lobe. There is a primary fissure on each lobe on each hemisphere between the anterior and the posterior lobe. And then the two hemispheres are connected by this little bulgy section called the vermis. And if you remember from the digestive system, when we talked about the vermiform appendix, vermis means worm. So somebody thought this looked like a little worm sitting in between these two hemispheres. Whatever, that's what the vermis is. Now, the limbic system is not part of the cerebellum. Okay, that was just the title of this section. The limbic system is also not a specific structural part of the brain. It's a functional system that includes structures from the cerebrum and the diencephalon and helps to process emotion and memory. And your sense of motivation is focused here in the limbic system. So the parts of it that I want you to know are, first of all, the cingulate gyrus, which is this part right here, right above the corpus callosum. Okay, it is a gyrus in the cerebrum, and it is the part of your brain that focuses your attention on emotionally significant events. So if something is important to you, this is going to tell your brain, hey, this is really important what's going on right now, okay? The hippocampus is this structure right here, which is kind of hidden inside this gyrus right here. So don't worry about it. You won't see it on any of our models or diagrams, except this one right here, and I had never asked anyone to find it on a test. The hippocampus makes memories. And your textbook says that it stores memory. Memory is far more complicated than that. You actually store memories all over your brain. But the hippocampus has a really important role in forming memories and then figuring out which of those need to be stored and passing them on to other sections. Word of note about marijuana. I know, tangent, right? No. marijuana affects the hippocampus. And specifically, the marijuana affects the ability of the hippocampus to store long-term memories. So one of the things that your brain does is you get all kinds of short-term memories throughout the day. And then after a few hours, your brain says, okay, I don't think we need that one. So it doesn't save it. Now, if your brain is thinking, I feel like my brain is always like that with anatomy, it kind of feels that way sometimes. But it's not necessarily the case. And that's why you need to review, so that you tell your brain, hey, we're using that one. Don't forget it, okay? Think of all the things you're exposed to all day, like what color t-shirt the person next to you is wearing, or what color car passed you on the freeway, or, whatever. Most of that information you don't need to store. So your brain is constantly saying, these are important things that need to become long-term memories. These are unimportant things that we can get rid of and forget about. Marijuana affects your brain's ability to store long-term memories, and it tells your brain, hey, we don't need any of these short-term memories. So if you're a student and you're using marijuana, you're trying to learn things and then telling your brain, that's not important, don't worry about learning it. You are actually working against yourself. So please wait until your break between semesters if you would like to indulge in some marijuana. All right, one more part that you need to, one more thing about the hippocampus. How you're going to remember the name hippocampus is that if there were a hippo on campus, you would remember that. I mean, assuming we ever get back on campus. Okay, finally, the amygdaloid body, or just the amygdala, that's this little thing right here. And this is your fear center. Amygdala just sounds like something you should be afraid of, doesn't it? So this is involved with your sense of fear. It's not the only thing that responds to fear, but it is. We think of it as the fear center. And it also helps to encode and store memories that are related to strong emotions. Anyone with PTSD has a strong fear emotion associated with something that might not normally cause fear. So for example, if you're terrified of rabbits, that may be because you were attacked by a killer rabbit at some point in your life. Yes, that was a Monty Python reference. And so you associate something that should not be scary, which is a rabbit, with fear. And so what PTSD treatment does is to help your brain to separate that fear from that memory of the thing. Okay. Now, the amygdala also helps encode memories with other strong emotions. So if there's a smell that reminds you of your grandmother, it's your amygdala that is remembering that, well, hopefully you loved your grandmother or love your grandmother, and so that's a strong positive emotion. Maybe you don't. Maybe you hate your grandmother, and it's a bad emotion. I hope it's a good one. Anyway, that's the amygdala. If all you remember is that it's the fear center, that's fine. Okay, so that's the cerebellum and the limbic system, and up next we're going to talk about the layers that protect the brain.